macrophages are white blood cells that provide protection against infection by phagocytizing foreign and injured cells. These macrophages also produce interferon and prostaglandins that enhance the immune response. Infants with abnormal gut flora, so within these infants, neutrophils and macrophages have hindered abilities to destroy invaders. Okay, so it's important for your gut flora to be okay or healthy in order for all these things to occur properly. Ways beneficial gut bacteria improve immune response. Okay, so healthy gut flora produces cytokines. These cytokines or kines regulate intensity and duration of the immune response. The interferons are types of cytokines that protect the body from viral infections. So the gut flora influences the entire body's immune system. When the gut flora is damaged, levels of AGA, lymphocytes, macrophages, and the interferons are decreased, okay, leaving the individual immune compromised. And so if your gut flora isn't healthy, none of you is going to be healthy. Kind of the bottom line of that. Okay, why use the probiotics in NICU? Coming back to the NICU again. On January 9, 2014, the Journal of Pediatrics stated, and I want to point out that this is my birthday, and no, I don't believe that was a coincidence. It was my birthday gift from the Journal of Pediatrics. Stated that incorporating probiotics into the standard of care for preterm infants of less than 32 weeks gestational age may significantly reduce the incidence of NEC. That is an American published magazine. I'm so jazzed. That is huge because thus far in our country we've been a little leery of this whole probiotics thing in the NICU. So this is like my first spark of hope. It was very exciting to find that article. And then a study on April 10th, just a few weeks ago, 2014, the results of a meta-analysis of 24 studies using, note, 5,529 neonates, which supplemented preterm infants. So although all of these studies were done differently, when they did this meta-analysis, they had to meet the criteria of being less than 37 weeks and less than 2,500 grams, okay? So they supplemented these babies with probiotics, okay? And it revealed that using probiotics in the NICU, quote, significantly reduced the incidence of severe NEC stage 2 or more and overall mortality. So that means anything that caused death. And if we go back to the whole immune system talk, you can see why it decreased overall mortality. The authors strongly supported a change in practice. Individual studies showed the reduction in NEC by as much as 56%. There was a Canadian study done. That was the one that this Journal of Pediatrics was talking about. Okay, it was done August of 2011 through maybe March or so of 2013. Okay, and they studied these premature infants, and they found a 50% decrease in NEC in that study alone. And those studies varied some. Some of them, I want to say the least amount I saw was 30%. But again, because they use different strains of the lactobacillus and the bifidus, okay? And that I think is going to be one of the key things that we need to look into is what strains we use. Okay, why use probiotics in the NICU? Okay, here's all the benefits that they have found. They shorten time to full feedings. There's a trend towards reduction in sepsis. When they say the trends towards reduction in sepsis, it was definitely reduced. Babies getting sepsis, and every study was reduced, but it didn't reach statistical significance. And so, but every one of them were reduced. Prevention of GIT colonization by Candida albicans. Okay, that's hugely important so we don't get thrush and diaper rashes and weakened immune systems. Protection from late onset sepsis. That was my little primary's identical twin brother ended up with late onset group B strep meningitis. So we can tell you this really does happen months and months later after birth. Few GI symptoms, or fewer GI symptoms, gas, diarrhea, and constipation. How many of our babies grunt and groan all the time because they have to poop? You walk in any of the pies and you're, them trying to poop. And I am excited just for this, to be honest with you. I can't wait for them just to pass their stools normally. Earlier achievement of food tolerance when they are fed. More rapid discontinuation of parental nutrition. Huge money savings also involved in that, so that because they get to full feeds faster, they need TP and lipids less, for less amount of time. Reduction in abnormal neurological outcomes. That's my biggie, that's my passion right here. Stimulation of the immune system, clearly. Improved absorption of essential nutrients. We can be giving babies wonderful breast milk, but are they absorbing all that they need from it? Prevention of also UTIs. And these are the known things. These are things that have been studied. There are more. Based on results of the Canadian study from 2011 to 2013, it is estimated that the universal adoption of prophylaxis, okay, if we started giving all babies in the NICU, or babies within our criteria, within the NICU, probiotics prophylactically, it has the potential to save 2,500 cases of NET every year in just North America alone, just in the United States and Canada. When you think about that throughout the world, what a phenomenal thing. The cost of probiotics used in the Canadian study was only 11 cents a day. Okay, that would save an estimated $500 million a year, $500 million a year, $500 million. If we do the math, half the kids get NAC for 11 cents a day. Talk about cost savings to our NICU. I'm doing my RM4 project on that. Some cost savings. Hey, you want to save $500 million? All right, not our NICU, but more research is needed. Admittedly, more studies are needed to fine-tune the use of probiotics in the NICU. Again, which strains will we use? Okay, when, which babies? Because again, different gestational ages were used in different studies. So, exactly when do you start it? The youngest that it's ever been started on was 4 hours of age. That baby did great. I'm probably pro doing it as soon as possible before we start. Well, a lot of them we start antibiotics already anyway, but we need to fine tune all those questions. We need to understand the specific benefits of each probiotic strain to assess the efficacy in extremely low birth weight infants. There's been a little more fear in studying this group for obvious reasons, and so we just kind of need to fine tune that to determine the most effective formula, dose, and duration of probiotics. So which strains would be used, how much would be used, and we'll get there in a minute, and the duration, how long do we use these. To determine if the addition of prebiotics improves the survival or efficacy of probiotics. Prebiotics are kind of like a food for the probiotics, okay? And in adults who take probiotics, a lot of times will take prebiotics. To determine the effects of pasteurization on donor breast milk's probiotics. I have to park it here for a second because, all right, remember that guy, the Russian guy, Eli Medchakanik, I can't pronounce his last name, the Russian, who discovered about the phagocytosis, and he said to go ahead and drink the sour milk. Guess who was against that? Louis Pasteur. He and this guy would go head to head over whether or not one should pasteurize milk. So I thought that was pretty funny. All right, so we need to determine the effects of pasteurization on donor breast milk. Does it kill the probiotics? Because it kills bacteria, so it probably kills the good bacteria. So I would conclude from this that babies who get donor breast milk from the beginning it's even more important to give them probiotics. And also the effects on freezing breast milk on its natural antibiotics or probiotics, because with my little primary, mom, I was having her bring home fresh breast milk, but at one point she kind of didn't want to do that anymore, and so I was asking the lactation specialist, how effective were these probiotics once the milk had been frozen? And she is still looking for that. She is really researching to try to find the answer. I don't know if we know. Here's what we do know. Lactobacillus prevents infectious disease, inhibits the growth of harmful bacteria, promotes good digestion, and boosts immune function. This has all been studied out the yin yang, and they have discovered that we do know this solidly. Okay, now we talked about how lactobacillus could have a different strain. Here's how it works: genus, species, strain, okay? And within strain, there's a bazillion, okay? So Lactobacillus casei increases levels of IgA, we know that. Lactobacillus rhamnosus reduces candida colonizations and reduces atopic dermatitis, eczema, which my primary has eczema. The one with the thrush went right into eczema because of a weakened immune system because of lack of probiotics. Bifidobacterium lactis decreases the incidence of antibiotic-associated diarrhea in infants. So if you know somebody whose kiddo had antibiotics and has bad diarrhea from it, this is your strain. Okay, you want to make sure whatever they're giving them includes this. Bifidobacterium bifidum strengthens GI immunity. So there's where we need the fine tuning, is figuring out the different strains and which one would work best in the neonates. And this is just another picture. I don't understand most of this, but this is our cells and the little villi in our GI tract. And it just shows, here are your probiotics, here's your bad guys, the pathogens. So probiotics decrease pathogen binding, they increase antibacterial substances, they increase the barrier integrity, increase survival, and increase all these doodads. And they increase innate immunity that we talked about. Concern with using probiotics. Okay, here's why the docs have been hesitant throughout America, okay, in using probiotics. The lack of research, the lack of availability of safe and effective probiotics, the possible development of an antibiotic resistance, and long-term adverse effects. Okay, it just hadn't been studied well enough at that point. Okay, here are some of those concerns that we're able to now refute. 15 years and 25 randomized control, and there's been many, many more of these. China, for example, they excluded China because they didn't want to have to deal with the Chinese language and having to interpret what everything meant, so they just got rid of it. So there have been more. But 15 years and 25 randomized controlled trials involving more than 5,000 neonates all concluded that probiotics are safe and effective. There have been no zero Zolcitzippo reported systemic infections caused by supplemented probiotics have occurred. That is the number one concern for a lot of physicians, is that, well, here we're introducing bacteria into the gut of immune suppressed neonates. Can we make them septic with this? Over 5,000 babies say no, okay, in 15 years. Many level 3 NICUs in Japan, Finland, Italy, and Colombia have been using probiotics for over a decade and haven't reported any significant adverse reactions or effects. Sometimes if you give too many probiotics, you can have gas and abdominal distension, which of course is a concern because it can kind of mimic neck with that abdominal distension. Of course, the distension would be very soft, okay? Why the hesitation in the U.S.? Some prominent neonatologists have been very negative about their introduction. That was a quote from a Canadian neonatologist. And there is no form of probiotics that is licensed to use in preterm infants. However, and this is a quote from a neonatologist, that is not really an obstacle to use, as most of what we use in the NICU is not licensed specifically for the newborn anyway. And that is a great point. It's true. So much of what we do is not licensed for newborns. And so we're getting closer. The cool thing is we're getting closer. Evidence-based guidelines for for probiotic supplementation. Based on a 2011 meta-analysis, which performed a systemic review, at this point, before April 10th, when I got the 24 meta-analysis study, this was the most recent meta-analysis study, okay? And I want to say that was only on 22 of those randomized control trials. So the meta-analysis, which was performed a systemic review of randomized controls trials from 1966 to 2015. They went on PubMed and they researched all the literature that existed since 1966, okay? Now, these studies weren't really even begun in the neonates until 1999, okay? But so they were very thorough. Bifidobacteria and lactobacteria are the species of choice. Strains should be isolated from humans versus an animal like a pig. because they have long-term safety records in humans or in infants. The variability of strains included in the meta-analysis indicates that strain-specific effects of probiotics may not be relevant to prevent NEC. And so what this is saying is that of all those studies that have been done, they use different strains. And so, but they were still getting that it was helping with NEC. So they're saying, well, it may not be that the strains are that important in prevention of NEC. I personally would rather go with the ones that had the better, rates of preventing NEC. So it may or may not be important, but we need to figure that out. Multi-strain probiotics may be more effective than single strain in the prevention of NEC. So you shouldn't just give one strain. Really, we need to give multiple strains of the ones that we know work most effectively. Based on a median dose used in these randomized control studies in preterm neonates, okay, so they took all the doses that were given. Again, every one of them used a different dose. And they went ahead with the median of those numbers. And so now here's what is being suggested. Suggested daily dose of 3 times 10 to the ninth. So that ends up being a billion. CFUs, which I did not know what that meant, stands for colonized forming units. So 3 times a day, we should give them 1 billion of these probiotics. And they should be less than 32 weeks. That is specific to the prevention of NEC. I personally think that it would have a lot more. I would give it to all babies. That's my own personal thoughts on it. But within this guidelines for the prevention of NEC, that's when it should be given, less than 32 weeks. For extremely low birth weight infants, if they're less than 1,000 grams, they suggested their starting dose being 1.5 times this 1 billion until they reach full enteral feedings of 50 to 60 mLs per kilo per day. That is because there is definitely more concern in the extremely low birth weight infants. Even peristalsis, I was reading in my little NICU book that peristalsis doesn't start in utero. I want to say it was 26, somewhere around 26 to 28 weeks. So I'm thinking, peristalsis in a 24-weeker, it doesn't even start in utero yet. I don't know if that's a Dr. Walsh question. Does it start already in a 24-weeker? There's so much more complexity when it comes to those little extremely low birth weight ones. The dilution of it's important because you don't want to make it too the hyperosmotic, okay? So you dilute it in 1 to 1.5, or at least they recommend, 1 to 1.5 cc's of sterile water or express breast milk due to osmotic load, okay? Currently no data on the toxic or lethal dose of probiotics for preterm infants. I don't think that, to my knowledge of all the studies I have done and everything I've read, I've not read of one single death. And so, so that's why they don't know if and what the toxic or lethal dose would be. So you have this problem where we got to give them enough that it survives the acidity of the stomach, the pancreatic secretion bile of the small intestine, and makes it to the colon. There's your little, but you don't want to give so much that you can possibly make them sick. Okay? Should start as early as possible before pathogens colonize or antibiotics destroy gut flora. Earliest reported age was at 4 hours, but recommended when a neonate is ready for enteral feedings. Because in these studies, most of them did it once the baby was ready for enteral studies. They have to be clinically stable, okay? And then when to stop. They recommend stopping when they're around 36 to 37 weeks, or if they're acutely ill. There still needs to be further studies about that. The acutely ill thing, it's kind of like, maybe they need it more when they're acutely ill. I don't know. Nobody knows. They need to study it. But I think there's literature back in the 1990s of an adult who died, who got septic with probiotics. I want to say it was in 1997, something around there, when they were acutely ill. Okay, so that's where that comes from. And we certainly don't want to risk that. Additional recommendations. Clinical monitoring for intolerance of probiotics, such as abdominal distension, diarrhea, vomiting, caused by high osmotic volume. And that's where what we just talked about, giving it in the 1 to 1.5 cc's and make sure it's not has too high of an osmotic volume. Gas, loose stools, and probiotic sepsis. and again, the probiotic sepsis has never occurred in neonates in these studies. Assurance of good manufacturing practices. Just even where we get our probiotics from is hugely important. There's a ton of places that sell them. I actually looked online. I can create my own probiotic concoction if I so desired. That's where how advanced this has become. So the packaging material ensures viability of the probiotics through the shelf life. Probiotics are sensitive to oxygen, moisture, and heat. The refrigeration is important to protect probiotics from significant temperature fluctuations. And don't use probiotic tablets since they report poor viability of strains. When I went out and got probiotics, I got it from Target and grabbed a tablet. So then I read this, and then I went back and got a capsule that released later in the colon. So they actually lived. Parents, never forget the parents. Parents should be, this again is recommendations. Parents should be informed about the benefits and potential adverse effects of probiotic use, and the informed consent might be necessary until sufficient experience has been obtained to provide probiotics as routine therapy without hesitation. It's gonna, when, I'm using the word when because I'm hopeful, probiotics are introduced into NICUs in the United States. I think it's gonna be one of those scary times where it's new to us, we don't, we're a little worried. So we'll probably be super aware of making sure parents have given us informed consent to do it. But I think eventually it's going to just become this natural thing where we're going to be like, oh yeah, remember when we didn't get probiotics? That's what we're going to be saying one day. Remember how bad the neck was? And this is benefits, and clearly you can't see this. So, but this is for all of us. If you're curious to see what benefits of probiotics could be for you. And there's infinite benefits up there, but we've already gone through all this. And I think that, ultimate question for me. Knowing these facts, can we now look into the eyes of parents of a child suffering for neck or who has died of neck and say, we're doing all we can? There's the question. So, the end. What are your thoughts? Dee, just hold on. I'm sorry, I just want to see what time it is. 6:27. Okay, Dee?
So, since there's so much studies that need to be done on babies and whatnot, we got a long way to go before it's even.
No. Great question. No. What they're saying within what the Journal of Pediatrics said and what the general consensus now is, because we have done so many studies to prove that they're safe within neonates, go ahead and implement them with those recommendations that I went through, okay, with the amount, the type, all those things. Okay, implement them, but we'll fine tune it. Because what the thought is, there's two camps. There's one camp that's still against it, okay, and that's because of the lack of research and stuff, but that's now been addressed, okay? We have the research now, 15 years, 25 randomized control studies, which is phenomenal, by the way. Like surfactant didn't get near that. Most things that we implement in the NICU didn't have 5,000 babies tested, okay? So their point is, implement now based on these guidelines, because these are known to be safe, and then fine tune it. And that's really where we're at. I saw Dr. Walsh walking down the hallway, and Whitney was here for this moment too. And I said, hey, Dr. Walsh, what do you think about probiotics in the NICU? He goes, think we should do them. And I said, you did not just say those words. And he's like, I did, because I don't understand the reluctance. So, on that note, I'm hoping that this is something that we'll see implemented. Dr. Whitecamp is my understanding that, I don't know who this is, I think it's me. Do you guys know who Dr. Whitecamp? I've got to meet this man because he's come to my new BFF, because he wants to, his specialty is neck and prevention of neck, and I'm hoping to get with him and talk with him about this. I'm hoping to make it part of my RM3 and 4 project to research this further and hopefully come up with a protocol and get these things implemented here. That's my hope. You know what I know at this point as far as Dr. Walsh seemed very on board with the possibility of it. So, but there is it is in its infancy, like in preemie infancy, with getting it enacted here. So, any questions or concerns about using it or?
I was just gonna say, encourage the moms to take it in the meantime, you know, like, until we can
Absolutely,
get
but I don't
everything
know,
on the
see,
road.
that's
I don't know
where
if
that
that's-
slippery slope is, cause I did talk to the team about that with my primaries, let me turn this off. With my primaries mother, and, she did start taking it, and they were fine with that. I think, what I've gotten from the team is just basically, they don't know, they've never been taught this, they don't know. They're scared they're gonna hurt the kids. I get it, you know, of course. Who wants to hurt a baby? But really, I think after I've done this research, I think we are hurting them by not giving it. That's what I'm concluding. And so that's my own personal thoughts on the matter. And that's why I would love to move forward on this. That's, today you guys are here as my finishing up my BSN. Finally, 5.5 full-time years later, I have a 4-year degree. But, and so this isn't speaking on behalf of the NICU, even though management is aware I'm speaking of it. They you know, gave their full consent to speak on it. But I'm just being super careful of what I say, because I just don't want to cause any problems, because there is definitely opposition to using probiotics. I would love the nurses to understand, hey, here's the science. Here's why it's important that we implement these. And I think if we get on board, the way in Canada that they got it implemented in their NICU is a mother came to the doctor and said, I want my baby getting probiotics. She read on it, and that's how it all got initiated there. Very cool, go moms. So, but moms taking probiotics, I'm hugely for it. We just talked to the team. I think we need to get something official from management before we can say that we can encourage that, because it is a touchy subject.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
So,
I'm not saying go out and say it, I'm
and
saying
then
that's something that we're
yeah,
supposed
oh yeah,
to start.
and being
thinking
pregnant,
about
taking
it.
probiotics and getting
Yeah.
your microbiotic healthy will help you know how that'll help my baby. They even anyway. Then I promised you a side note. So
Development.
632. So I get to reading this book. It's called The Gut and Psychology Syndrome. Okay, it's by the doctor that I told you about, neurologist, neurosurgeon, who truly cured her son of autism. I know you can't even say those words. And it is so phenomenal. I highly recommend that you guys all read this book, how we can help so many kids. And I've been dabbling in alternative medicine for about 20 years. I came here from Colorado. It was more popular out that way. It's closer to California than Colorado. Yeah, Broomfield. I know about you. And so...
Except nobody vaccinates their children. But
wait, what?
nobody vaccinates their children in Colorado.
Yeah. Well, because... And that's a whole other thing of vaccines. If you want to know my thoughts on vaccines, I get both sides. And I think that probiotics is your answer to both sides. The reason why Stephanie Younger, not Vanderbilt, feels that the reason people are afraid, and I've taken care of in the PICU kids who have had reactions to antibiotics, that the government is paying them because they have proven that it was absolutely, indeed, from the vaccine, 100%. They're getting money from our government. And those reactions occur. Here's why. Again, this is from that neurologist, neurosurgeon, a doctor, an MD. What happens is, these babies are born with unhealthy gut microbia. Part of that is from just generationally. A lot of it's from the toxic substances, the crap we eat, and we all know we eat a lot of crap. Okay, and also think about all the sugar we ingest. Sugar feeds candida, yeast, okay? It overgrows, okay? It actually will form blankets on your spinal cord of yeast. And so you take this baby, and some of them will be born C-section, maybe never even have it, and then formula fed. Think about those kids especially. They get introduced with a virus into their bodies, okay? And a lot of times it's multiple ones. What I've always done naturally with my kids is I never gave them more than one shot at once. I just didn't think it made any sense. I said, one shot and you're done, I'll be back in a few weeks, okay? And I did give my kids their immunizations. My first daughter had a reaction to her first DPT. Terrified me. It was back when they had a different form of the pertussis. Okay, it's 20 years ago. Okay, so that's what I do naturally. This doctor says give 1 and space it 6 weeks in order for neurological health. It makes sense. And also bring your vaccines. Let's not put mercury and a lot of junk in them. I mean, if you don't want your kid to, if you wouldn't feed your kid mercury, do you think you should inject them with it? I mean, just kind of common sense. There are other healthier ways of making our vaccines. All right, I'm very pro-vaccines, but I'm pro in an altered fashion. The reason we give multiple shots of vaccines right now is because some folks won't come back and get more. So we